Okay, this is the Northwest Vintage Radio Club, Northwest Vintage Radio Society, and Robbie is going to give a 10-point triage, right? Is that what you're going to call this, your 10-point triage, Robbie?
Yeah, triage is fine. Yeah, triage
okay.
is fine.
So we're going to go through that, and if anybody needs to ask questions, please either raise your hand or just go ahead and unmute yourself and let Robbie answer that question, Sarah. So I'm going to give it over to Robbie. There you go, Robbie. It's all yours.
Okay, thank you. This is Robbie. I'm doing about a little more than a 10-point check here on radios. Every radio has got a very different kind of a circuit in it, different output tubes, different stuff and everything. But I'm going to just start with the basics. And if somebody has a radio that doesn't work, I go to the AC cord and check the AC cord and the on and off switch at the same time. I put an ohm meter through it. And if everything is fine there, then I go on to the AC switch too. But then I go from there to the speaker, and I do an ohm test on the speaker, and I do an ohm test on the transformer that's operating the speaker. I'm just kind of basic here first, but I'll get into something a little bit more later. And so if the switches are fine, the cord's fine, the speaker's fine, then I go to the fuse. Some radios have fuses on them. As Blake was telling me, some of these people like to have fuses put on their radios. So you check your fuse, and that's good. Then go to checking the tubes. And so I go through and check. I have a tube tester, and I go through and check all the tubes. And if the tubes are fine, if they're not, I just put a new one in that's bad. And then I go from there to checking. When I check the tubes, I check for shorts. Find shorts, and I take that tube out of there and put it in a better tube. Then I go to checking the high voltage transformer. Check all the leads on it. Make sure they all have continuity all the way to the I can't think of it. The power tube. Check that. So if that's good, then go on to the next I turn the radio on, and I check it for the voltage off of the transformers and see if there's any voltage. And if there's not, then I can pretty well figure that there's an open in the transformer. So I go from there. Then I check some radios have interstate transformers. I have one that has 2 interstate transformers in it. And one was bad, so I had to change it out. So that's what you can check too if your radio doesn't work. And then I go to check out the high voltage caps on the power supply and see if any of them are shorted or anything, or burn up or blown up, or just come apart, or bad connections or whatever. And then go to page 2 here. I check some of the radios for the speakers have a regular speaker magnets, permanent magnets, and I check the coils on those kind of coils. Then there's the other speakers that have the fill coils in them, and I check those, see if those are good. If those are good, then it's fine. Then I go to the oscillator coils, those tin cans on top of the chassis. I check oscillator coils for continuity with an ohm meter. Then I go to the RF coils, and I check those for the ohm meter. Then I check the antenna coils for those, and then I check the IF coils from the ohm meter, make sure those are all good. And then I look for loose connections on all the tube circuits. I go by with I got this little isolated pencil thing, and I just run across all the tubes, all the connections, and see if I can find a problem. I did find a problem one time where the wire was loose, and then the radio came on. Then the tuning strings on some of the radios, if they break, and that will, keep you from tuning your radio. You can fix those, put new strings on. Then the band selector. I found a band selector a bad one time on one of my radios. It was on the shortwave side, so it's kind of hard to fix it, especially when one of the contacts break off in there. So that's one thing to check. Then I checked a lot of the tubes on some of the radios have grid caps. So I checked the grid caps and make sure they're not loose. So I had one that was so loose that we just touched it, it just fell off the tube. So that's a big help. And then some radios have these silicone rectifiers in them. You go through and check those out, make sure those are working real good. So that's pretty well my list of checking for the radios. You got any questions about some of these items?
How do you check your caps? Oh, sorry. How do you check caps in circuit?
Caps?
How do you check capacitors in circuit?
I go onto the tube where the grid is on the tube, and then go where the cap is into the circuit. Use my ohm meter across there, and if that's good, then the caps are good.
Have you ever tried an ESR meter?
No.
You might want to try one. They're very good for in-circuit tests, and they do a pretty good job on electrolytics.
Oh, okay.
When you do an ESR meter, do you do that at voltage, or is that just at the at the like a low voltages?
You power it down, disconnect your AC, and it's a static test.
Okay.
It's just across the component.
Yeah.
And
you have to disconnect it, right?
Doesn't have to be. Usually, a lot of times, I shouldn't say. Sometimes it's helpful. Most of the time, you can test it in circuit just fine, because the ESR equivalent series resistance is typically less than an ohm. So a lot of the other circuitry usually has no effect on it.
I see.
So you can do a pretty good and a pretty accurate test in most cases with the thing in circuit and powered down for electrolytic.
You ever use a audio generator, Robbie, to insert an audio tone into the radio and see if you can locate where where a problem in a stage is?
Yeah, that's one thing. Excuse me just a second. I got to shut a light off over here. Yeah, I did that one time when I was over at Mark Denmore's place. We had a radio that had a open in it, so we put on the tone control. We followed all the way through. It all the way went through the RF, the IF, and then when we got to let's see, what was it? Oh, the transformer for the speaker. We got the tone was going in, but it wasn't coming out. So that's a good test too.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. And sometimes I'll take a piece of wire. I usually like to put a cap on it for safety, and then go through and if you have like a hum or either that or noise or something being generated by the radio, go through and usually start in the audio section or in the speaker in that, and then start touching that from ground through the cap to touch the control grids on the tubes, each one in each stage, and do that and start at the output, and then move back and then go to the detector and then the second IF, first IF tubes, and onto the converter and RF on back, you know, that way. And keep doing that until the noise goes away, and then you can isolate where the problem is, you know. Sometimes I've had like leaky caps, you know, that you normally wouldn't replace, like mica caps. Sometimes, you know, you wouldn't think that they aren't bad. Especially some of these radios, these 50s radios with the small little IF cans, you know.
You broke up there.
Oops. Can you hear me?
You
Can you hear me now?
stalled out.
I
Anyway.
can hear Mike.
Anyway, they put these that silver mica stuff inside those IF cans, and those things can be a real problem. And then you can isolate the noise coming out of them by doing that, you know. But yeah, that's a good check that you have, good checklist you've got there, Robbie. That's pretty good.
Now there was
So-
one
Hello,
thing. Yes.
may I ask a question? This is Jim, KO16O camera. Sorry. Simple question. You mentioned putting the cords on and the strings of dial cords where the dial strings have broken. Where do you get the thread? What kind of thread, and do you need to treat it in a special way before you use it? That's all.
Well, I'm not sure, but I get my thread and some of the little tractor thread things for Zenith. I get those from Blake. He has a lot of thread stuff there, so that's where I get my thread from.
I've had good success.
You know, Blake,
I've had good success going down to, believe it or not, going down to Weimart and getting their cloth covered fly fishing line.
Exactly.
It works really good, and you can buy a roll of it cheap, you know, down there, and you know, you want to try and get the right size, but it's strong and cloth cord for and it doesn't stretch, you know. Stuff works good.
Yeah, you want to get Dacron. This Dacron back in.
You're right, Mark. Yeah, I forgot that. That's right. You get the Dacron, yeah.
Dump a load of, oh, you're in.
okay.
So
I've had
Robbie,
good
I have one question.
Oh yeah.
Of all the stuff you've repaired, like, do you find that it's what's the thing that you find is kind of like what's typically the red herring? Is there something in there that's typically the bad part that you know, like, oh yeah, 80% of the time it's the
Well, it's usually it's either the two things, bad tubes or bad caps. And the rest of the things seem to be okay.
Do you go with do you
Okay.
actually go through and test the resistors to make sure they're in spec? Or
Oh yeah, that was one thing I didn't put on my list. Yeah, I go through if I get a radio and I get a drawing, I'll match up the drawing with the resistors and make sure they're all right. But I've ended up finding some schematics or some on the schematic that the resistors were way off. Like you have a 10K resistor, and the other resistors are like 25 or 30K, or they're way down below like 5K or something. Yeah, that's one thing I forgot to put on my list. That was one thing good to check is all the resistors, because you could have I had a resistor that had a crack in it, and you couldn't see it until you moved it. And I'd use my little plastic thing I have, just touch the resistor and it broke open. So you can't even see it. It doesn't even look like it's been burnt or anything. It's just cracked.
Yeah, on Zenith, a lot of your pre-war Zenith, one of the big problems with resistors was the canadome resistor voltage divider. It's generally riveted to the back of the chassis. And it's got 4 or 5 different taps on it. And you'll pick up a fairly substantial crackle, and it goes through the entire radio. So when you're trying to troubleshoot it, it could be anywhere, it could be anything. And it's kind of like IF crackle, only much louder and stronger. And about all you can do is there might just be one section of that. Sometimes you can put a terminal strip in and just use an equal big wire around resistor and solder that in place. But you have to disconnect the wires and hook to your new part rather than just jumper the bad spot on it. But that's quite common in the Zenith. I've done a lot of them, and I've run into a lot of those bad canadone resistors. Here, a wire wound resistor in a metal tray with good fireproof paper around them, because they get kind of hot.
Oh, okay. Sounds great.
I've seen those candome resistors in Philcos too.
Oh, yeah. And then Dick's
How do they
right.
hold up? How do they hold up in Philcos? Better than I usually do Zeniths, and a lot of them go bad in Zeniths. But is it the same?
They go bad in Philcos too.
They do in Philcos. Yeah, you'll have them go bad, and Dick's absolutely right. You don't jumper from across the bad resistor, because they can always, maybe sometimes they'll warm up and start trying to connect again, or give you all kinds of problems, especially noise problems. And you isolate the new resistor completely away from the old resistor on the candome. But
Robbie,
Yeah.
do you automatically trust your tube tester? Robbie,
What's that? Excuse
do
me.
you automatically trust your tube tester? In other words, if a tube measures bad, do you just automatically replace it?
No, I have two testers. So I take that one tube out of the one tester and put it in the other. And if it tests the same, then I figured that the testers are working right.
Okay, but are they both good mutual conductance type Hickok testers, or?
Yeah, they're Peacock testers. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, but do you find that
they work real well?
right? But and still, in many cases, they still don't test at your normal full operating voltages and stuff. So, but again, if a tube measures weak, even, do you change it? I'm curious about, because sometimes you can replace 5 tubes and still not solve the problem if replace every tube and not end up with a different result. I'm just curious if what your experience is.
Well, I've had pretty good luck. I usually, when I have a tube that reads 50 or 60%, I just take it out and use it for a spare for something.
Oh, you don't
put
throw
a
them
tube
away,
in
huh?
that's reading 80 or 90%.
Okay.
No, I just use them for testing another radio.
Okay.
What I
Curious
do
about your experience.
What I do is remove them and put a piece of blue tape or something on the darn thing so that I can tell it from the good ones. And sometimes when you need one, maybe this is a noisy one, but it still works. And if you're low on that particular tube, at least you got something you can try, and it's a bad one. But another thing is, when I throw these away, I cut 1 or 2 of the pins off of them. And the main reason is that I've found lots of used tubes. You go into antique shops and stuff, someone might have a box full of used tubes, and of course, you have no way to know if they're any good, and they're probably not, because somebody changed them at one time. But if you cut the pins off of them, at least they're not any good. You can tell that they're garbage. Don't waste your money on them.
That's a pretty good idea. I've never done
good
that.
idea.
I like that, yeah.
I've pitched lots of tubes, but I've never cut the pins on them. Good idea. Thank you.
But if you cut just 1 or 2, you don't have to cut them all off. But
Right.
some people like to have them around just for display or something,
Mm-hmm.
But I know in the antique business, there were certain kinds of dishware like the Ivy pattern that the wife used to like, and she'd find those, and any chips was, instead of breaking them and throwing them in the garbage, she'd just get rid of them or give them to the Goodwill or something. And I've gone into the Goodwill store and actually identified by the breaks and cracks on stuff that we had that we gave away.
Hmm.
And here there,
Yeah.
you know,
You guys ever been over to that old Oregon hardware store on Tacoma Street?
are you talking about what you're talking about there?
It's called Old Oregon Store. It's got all kinds of old furniture, doors, knobs, miscellaneous stuff, electrical stuff, mechanical stuff, wood, everything. Well, I found a tray full of tubes over there one time. In that tray, there's a bunch of 6K7s and 6 other stuff. And there was 3 1L6s in there. That tray. Well, they only charged me $1 a piece for the tubes, so I took them all home. And all 3 of those 1L6s read 70 or 80%.
Oh, wow, that's great.
So for $1 a tube for 1L6,
That's
pretty
all
good.
right. That's great, Robbie.
Yeah.
R5, man.
I didn't think
Once in
I
a
didn't think that store had tubes. Yeah.
That store, the one that is near, or it's between 17th and 16th on Tacoma on the north side of the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that great big store. It's got everything in it. You wanted an antique door for an old house, they have it there. They don't have much on radios though. They have this one shelf that has all these high voltage insulators. There was one shelf there that had 2 insulators that were 4 feet tall and about 1 foot wide.
Wow,
Those are monsters.
heavy duty.
Yeah, look like the ones that hang on the transmission lines. Oh, there was another thing I forgot to put
Portland hardware and architecture.
on my list. Yeah, there's couple more things I was going to put on my list, but I didn't. When you turn your radio on and you get a real weak signal. It's not very good. I found out that when I put it on the AM band, there's it's got that big AM coil in there. I found out that was bad on my radio. So I went to, this radio had FM on it too. It's the old FM. Then I went to shortwave, and the shortwave worked fine on that coil. And then the FM coil worked fine, but the AM didn't. So I
Are you
Well,
talking about
looked at the
the,
coil. Sure enough,
and, oh, I'm sorry, Robbie. Are you talking about the antenna coil or?
no, this was this radio had 6 bands on it, and they're in a circle. The coils were in a circle around the rotor.
Oh, wow.
Turns them. And so you just, yeah, it's kind of like a Gatling gun.
Yeah.
Coils.
Oh, that's different. So was that a, well, no, huh?
That was an old.
That's interesting.
I'm trying to remember the name of the radio now, but maybe it was an RCA or a Philco or something. But this thing had great big coils in it. I mean, it was a huge console.
Yeah.
Monster. Well, that was one thing that I was going to mention. You check if you have one of those things that has a rotary coil on it, check those for continuity if you don't have any signal or anything. But that's about all on my list I got. Yeah. Oh, does that Mac, that guy that fixes the speakers, is he still fixing speakers now, or is he kind of short on inventory?
No, he's still fixing speakers. You know, his only problem is that he's short on inventory on just some of the early field coil speakers, the voice coils that fit the smaller ones. You know, that have the pole that's like half inch or 9/16 diameter pole in them. That's where he's having a little bit of trouble getting those. But if you go in there with like a 10-inch or whatever speaker, they're still field coil speaker. They're still reconing and repairing those. Yeah, he's still there.
Okay, I've got a 12-inch speaker. I need to put a new coil in it.
Yeah, yeah, he can fix that.
Okay.
Hey, Dick.
All right.
Dick, I got a question for you. I got a guy coming over tomorrow. He's going to drop off a Zenith 9S 262, and I have a feeling he told me that he wasn't getting the thing to tune in, that it may have a bad tuning motor. And so, do you have you had experience with those, Dick Delschneider?
Well, yeah, I don't have any spares anymore. I used to, but
Yeah.
well, a lot of times, if it won't tune, you know, there's a separate belt down there for those, and it could be his inside belt is busted, in which case you can put a couple of small O-rings on it, and it'll work just as good. But
okay.
And if it doesn't run, you might it might be trying to run, and it might just need a little lubrication too. But
yeah, maybe clean it up and then lube the motor. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. I did one on a chair side. Can't remember the model, but it was a Zenith chair side, and it had the electric tuning motor on that. And that's all I did, is I put a belt on it. And so, yeah, I've kind of been down this road before, but I just wanted to know what you do on them, and that kind of sounds like the same thing. So either belt and then clean real good the motor real good, and then give it some light electric motor oil lube and get the thing to run. Okay.
yeah, those motors take just some light, like sewing machine oil, and they got little felt gizmos on the end of them, so they're supposed to be oiled, but nobody oils them. You know, you can't do it. You got to take it apart and turn it upside down. You know?
Yeah, that's probably it. And I think it's 1938, and so Lord knows if it's even ever been lubed in that time. You know, but if it was worked on, somebody may have lubed it up. Who knows? I don't know, but I'll find out.
I work on a lot of tech scopes, you know, and some of those old ones, you know, you turn them on and pretty soon they're going whoom, whoom. The fan is starting to build up a little speed and like that old oil just gets so stiff, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. A lot of turntable motors are that way too, you know.
Oh yeah.
Do you guys use like 3-in-1 oil then for that?
No, don't ever use 3-in-1 oil. Get some good, like Dick said, some good sewing machine or good. You can get a regular electric motor oil that's made for that, but 3-in-1 oil, it'll gum up. It works okay when you first put it on, but
they claim it's the reason I ask
3-in-1 oil is bad.
I think they claim that that's supposed to be sewing machine oil on the can, right? So that's why I was wondering.
Yeah, that's what they claim, but 3-in-1 oil is not good quality stuff.
And penetrating oil too, right?
It'll gum up. But you can go down. I went down here to Ace, and they sell a real good high quality, and it's real lightweight, and it's made specifically for electric motors. So
okay.
Or sewing machine oil is good too. Yeah.
Do you need a heat resistant oil too?
No.
No, doesn't get
No.
that hot.
I wouldn't think so. I mean, you're not getting that hot there.
And in most cases, you won't know if your oil that you put on there was really good, except for another 20 years later.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's why you need to oil them, right? 20 years later.
Well, I know like for dryers, they use a Zoom oil. It's a real lightweight oil, but it's also heat resistant. So.
Oh, and dryers. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Because those motors get real hot in there. Plus, plus you have combustion, especially a gas dryer.
I haven't been there yet.
Do something?
One of the worst things I ever worked on for like tobacco smoke mixing with the old lubricant is the old jukebox mechanisms. And those things would actually it looked like they might have used lubriplate or just plain grease on them. And then after 40 years in a beer joint.
Yeah.
But they'd get so sticky they wouldn't even move. And you'd have to get in there with shoot WD-40 in there and work them back and forth. And boy, it's a mess getting them freed up. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of that, when they first did it, they just used grease,
Find that on a lot of old tape decks also. Same thing.
Yeah, you almost have to use a chisel.
Yep.
Oh, for
Sometimes they're a real
sure.
pain.
Yeah, that's Dick's. I can remember some of that stuff, and that it just turned into this brown sludge stuff from tobacco smoke being in there back in the day. People used to smoke indoors all the time back in the. I can remember my grandfather back in the
5 years ago.
50s. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Air conditioners were famous for that with me. It would turn the plastic all dark brown, all from cigarette smoke. And also there's an inside filter in the air conditioner, and it would be all just covered with tobacco.
Yeah.
Hard to wash out.
After you cleaned them and lubricated them, take a look at your hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I ran into a situation a while back. I was in a radio station and they were cleaning the station out, getting rid of all their equipment. So I got this big 8-yard controller, thing's 3 feet wide. And I went to pick it up and my hands kind of stuck to it. It had cigarette smoke all over that thing. So when I got it home, it took me almost a whole day. I took the covers off, the lid off and everything, and cleaned up everything.
Nice.
It was just yellow everywhere. Wow.
He whiz.
Yeah. And then all the rest of the stuff I got from them, the power supplies and the turntables and everything, they were just covered with smoke.
Yeah, Robbie, I had a similar thing one time. I picked up from an estate sale a really nice, very large Pioneer receiver, and the face on it was gold. And I had no idea that they'd ever put out a gold model till I got it home and had it in the house. And wait a minute, it started smelling. And I realized that gold was not supposed to be gold. It was a regular silver face that was, it had a perfect looking finish on it.
Wow.
But it was gold, it was nicotine. And the problem I had, I used toothpaste to clean it off.
Really?
The face looking good. Problem is, it got inside everything, in all the switches and stuff, and I ended up scrapping it.
I'll be darned.
It just was. I mean, every switch, every contact was just disgusting. And I tried cleaning, I tried soaking them, and I gave up on it.
Gosh, I'll be darned.
Put a pressure washer on it.
That's really what I should have done, but I had no idea when I saw that. The finish was just too perfect. There's no way that could have been something like that, but it certainly was.
So I actually have heard of people putting their radios in. Oops. I've actually heard of people putting their radios in the dishwasher.
Oh, wow.
I haven't
And
heard
then-
Wow.
And then you run it through the dishwasher and you let it set out for a couple of days and dry, and your chassis is perfectly clean. And we were talking about that on Antique Radio Forum.
Is that right, Dave? Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
Then an ultrasound would work great then, right? For small parts, I guess.
Yeah, the ultrasounds are nice. I've got one. I like using it on variable caps, you know, when they get dirty and noisy. You get those little fibers going in between the plates, you know. And
Does ultrasound clean those, Mike? Does
and you
ultrasound
can-
get rid of those?
there's a couple of different ways to do it. You can burn them out with high voltage, or you just put them in an ultrasound.
Okay.
Yeah, I've
What kind
got
of solution do you
one that
use
works well.
there, Mike?
What is that stuff? Is that
Simple green, is that what you're trying to
simple green?
Simple green?
Simple
use
green.
ammonia?
Yeah,
Ammonia and soap?
I had to think about it. Yeah, simple.
Do you
green
use full
works good.
strength simple green, or do you?
No,
Dilute
you want to dilute it down. You follow the directions to dilute it down. You know, for normal cleaning, and then you throw it in there and you got to take your capacitor. Now you want to take all the mica and out off the trimmers is a good idea. You know, and then for the oscillator and antenna sections out of that, and then just throw the variable condenser in that stuff, and it just cleans it, makes it like brand new.
You oil it and you're done, huh? Put that together.
So Tektronix had, a pretty good procedure on cleaning their oscilloscopes, you know.
Yeah.
They washed them, they put them in an oven and dried them out.
Wow.
Even the ones that got radioactive in the atomic tests, they actually cleaned a lot of those. Some of them were too hot to touch, but
Really?
oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
So they had to go and clean out their sinks then? All the sinks are contaminated? The whole piping system?
At that time, I don't think they worried about it.
Yeah.
But the plumber could see the pipes real well, and they just kind
glow
of
in the
glowed
dark.
in the dark.
Yeah.
Holy
Oh.
cow.
So what they use? They use uranium to be radioactive?
Well, these were used in atomic tests. A lot of these.
Oh, I see. So that was residual.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Radioactive. Wow, that's scary then. Because you don't know the levels then, right? The Geiger meter.
Well, some of the scopes we bring in that have been the type that they use in tests. I've brought my Geiger counter in to test them first.
I was just gonna say, yeah, your part of your Geiger counter would be part of one of your tools.
See how much lead you have to wear. What kind of lead
man.
suit you got to wear.
Well, I have to tell a little story here. My brother and I, we went down to see the Trinity test site. And anyway, so he brought his Geiger counter. Well, he checked with TSA. Yeah, no sweat. You can bring that on the airplane. And but then we went to get on the airplane, and that was a different deal. So luckily he got there a little early. It took him a half hour to get through to get his Geiger counter on with him on the airplane. So when we went to the Trinity test site, we're sniffing around, and hell, there's nothing above ambient, Well, what the hell here? We should see something a little hot. We finally found a little piece of green glass on the ground there. And yeah, it ticked up, maybe a third up on the most sensitive meter reading. They'd really cleaned the place up. So on the way back, we're on the airplane, and I said, hey, Rob, why don't you turn your Geiger counter on now? Well, it goes up 2/3 full scale. Well, we're getting a lot more from the atmosphere, from the sun, than we were ever getting down there on the Trinity test site.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Huh.
That raised a little commotion in the cabin.
Well, they say that 30,000 feet is more radiation than Fukushima exclusionary area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, the stews are a bit upset, and some of the passengers were a little bit upset. What the hell's going on here, you know?
Yeah.
That's pretty
Huh.
funny. I thought you were gonna say something like your battery was bad. And, yeah, I don't know why this thing looks great.
So that was probably from solar wind then, and the magnetic field wasn't protecting from that at that high altitude then.
Right. And it's going right through the fuselage. And, you know, the sensor, the Geiger tube, you've got a thing you can shut it off. That doesn't shut it off up there.
Wow.
Not like it does with the radio.
It goes right through the shield, huh?
Yep. Goes right through the shield.
Gee whiz.
Right through your body. You name it.
And those stewardess and crew members that spend all that time up there, they're getting irradiated.
Yeah, just like the astronauts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure the astronauts are getting a lot of that.
Yeah, because they're 200 miles out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Maybe that's why a lot of people fall asleep when they're riding an airplane.
So bring your Geiger counter up
They
next
fall
time
asleep.
and press through.
Yeah, I'm gonna check for radiation on your plane.
Rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat.
Oh boy.
So Bruce, what was the name of the guy in Aloha who had all those scopes he's collected them all and everything?
Griffiths?
Yeah, Stan Griffith. Yeah, is he still around?
No, he died just about a year ago.
Oh, okay. But I went over and saw his stuff one time. He had like 4 outbuildings or 3 outbuildings full of scopes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he would pressure wash them, except you'd cover up the power transformers. And then he had a refrigerator that he had made to heat, to dry them. So he put them in there for 2 days to dry them out. And what happened to all this stuff?
A lot of it got sold. I'm not sure of the last portions of that. He was president of the Vintage Tech Museum initially. And so initially he wanted to show some of his stuff that he'd refurbished. And by the time the museum came into fruition, somehow the women heard about it and, oh, that shit you got in the garage, couldn't the museum use it? So we end up with all this stuff in the museum. And so not much of Stan's stuff really stayed in the museum.
Yeah, he's my neighbor, or was, I mean.
Okay.
I live about 3 blocks or so from Stan's house. You can see his antenna.
Oh, really? I bought his tube tester from him.
Okay.
His TV2.
Yeah, and he was on the county commission that put in the standards for the antennas, so he could keep his.
I
Nice.
heard about that one.
Yeah, I think Lyles knows more about that. Lyles is also in on the county commission stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah, he is on.
So at the museum, we ended up with a few things from him that we didn't have. But a lot of that stuff was kind of sold wholesale and went out a lot of places. I'm really not familiar with where it all went, but there was an awful lot of stuff, and I don't know what happened to his T-Bird yet.
Huh. Of course, he wrote the book about scopes.
Right. And the Vintage Tech Museum has copies of that if you want one.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one too.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, it's basically notes about restoration of old tech scopes.
Yeah, and a catalog of all the different ones and the different models and, when they were made, what they were sold for, stuff like that.
I went over to visit him, and he showed me. He was so interested, in his He had all the manuals, I think, for every scope. And then he also had the microfiche. So he could tell you that this switch in this scope was also used in these two other scopes. So he could do the part comparison. But all that information was there. And of course, it's for stuff that was made like in the 60s, right? So Tektronix does not even have that now, I don't think, or I doubt they would.
No, they don't. But we do have it online. Most of that is on the Tech Wiki site.
Oh, it is.
Supports the Vintage Tech Museum. The RPR, replaceable parts. Okay, I'm screwed up. I can't remember. But anyway, the Tech Wiki site has that online so that you can find out if you're missing a part and you need a part, where can you find it? What instruments had that same part?
Well, that's good, because I saw that stuff, and he was in bad shape when I met him. Okay. And I thought, God, all this stuff is going to be gone, because nobody that I know of would ever want that. They're going to sit there, so they're just going to throw it away. So
that's the
problem.
problem.
It's there.
Yeah, well, we've tried at the Vintage Tech Museum to capture what we could, but he took a lot in his mind with him that we don't have. And that's what you got to remember about your father, your mother, grandparents. You got to dig it out of them before they go.
Yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's a sad state to lose all of that,
Bruce, what do you think is the most popular and most famous scope that Tektronix sold?
I would guess the 545.
Yeah.
It was one of the first plug-in scopes that added a lot of versatility. It had pretty good bandwidth, and they sold hundreds of thousands of them. They were all vacuum tube. The later versions started to go hybrid, adding a lot of semiconductors. At the 545 time, you had they were tech-made CRTs, but they were more pretty much standard kind of CRTs. And after that, then it got into the distributed deflection systems where the deflection plates weren't a constant, a single plate, but there were a multitude of plates that looked like a line, like a...
You stalled out.
What's that?
You came to a stop.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It might be on your end, Robbie.
Oh.
Yeah.
You've been coming to a stop a bit, Robbie.
Yeah.
How different is the 555 from it?
Well, the 555 really is a dual gun CRT that really is two scopes in one. You have two deflection systems, you have two vertical systems that really deflect two different beams onto the CRT. So you could be displaying some analog picture of a signal on one display, and on the other you could be doing a spectrum analyzer, a totally different kind of display on the same CRT. You could also be putting, they had plugins that had 4 channels. So you could have one beam with 4 channels and another beam with 4 channels. So you could have 8 bits of data based on that one same CRT. And that was very early on.
Wow.
So Bruce, I read where you have a 570 in the museum now?
Yes, indeed.
Is that working?
Yes, it is.
Is there any way that you could show us sometime how that works? Because that's, I would think it'd be kind of, it's a curve tracer.
Correct.
I always thought it'd be kind of cool to get a curve tracer someday. Just I don't know why, just because I'm stupid, but
I think our president put something on the website. I set it up so that one channel, that's got AB. AB is for comparing tubes, so you can look at the transconductance of matching tubes and such. And so hi-fi tube people are really into the 570, but there aren't a lot of them available. So what I did was put one channel or one side has a 6AU6, which is a pentode. Okay. And on the other side is a 6C4, which is a triode. Okay. Look at the difference. The pentode has these nice flat curves. The triode has these curves that are very exponential. It shows the tremendous difference between the triode and the pentode.
Oh, wow. That is really cool.
Yeah. I'll try and find that link. I'm pretty sure we have that on the website and send it out to you so you can see that.
that do you for those scopes, you had to take pictures of the trace and then put your ruler up there and actually measure your slope and stuff like that, right? I mean,
well, no, you've really got a graticule there that you can measure the slope.
Yeah.
In one, you've got volts in the horizontal direction and you've got current in the vertical direction.
Yeah.
And so you can look at the slope and,
DIDV.
the triodes are rather exponential and the pentodes are pretty flat on top.
And what about Bruce? What about the 922? That's a dual channel. You should be able to do that with that scope as well, with the two channels. Where if you wanted to compare matching tubes, that type of thing, is that correct?
Well, the 922, that's a T922, right?
Yeah.
That's just a two-channel scope, basically.
Right.
That's not.
Doesn't drive them.
It's not a curve tracer, though.
You don't have anything to drive the tubes with there.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. To drive the tubes, you'd have to do that.
Basically, the 570 has everything to drive the tube. It's got filament voltage adjustments. It's like a tube tester.
Oh, I see.
Exactly.
I didn't know that. Okay.
You sweep the grid, right?
It's graphic. And so you can step the grid voltages and you see the different levels of plate current.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, yeah.
It's really cool.
Just like you see in the specifications in the RCA handbooks, where they put the curves out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Except for the
Nice
thing
to
that
have
is,
one
you
of
can do
those.
it by the transistors too, but this goes up to hundreds of volts, right? I think the 570, goes up to 500 volts or something like that, Bruce?
The 570, I'm not sure what the voltage goes up to, but it doesn't test transistors. You have to go to the 575 to do that.
So
I mean, the
that's-
570, as far as the plate voltage, you can go up to 500 volts or.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the limit is on that one.
Wow. So that's why the audiophiles really go for those things then, because then they can they can do their tube matching for quad tubes for stereo and all of this other stuff. Yeah. Okay.
At operating conditions, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the best part.
You can match it to the gnat's ass.
Nice.
Are
Well,
they
I'd
still
love to see-
available? I mean, do you still see
I'd
those
love
out
to
for
see
sale?
that. You ought to demonstrate that for us sometime, Bruce, if you've got one. And let
I
us
think
see.
I think the price is a liver now, Franklin.
No,
You have to give your liver or your pancreas or something
I was
like
gonna
that.
say,
Yeah,
those must be, those are high dollar stuff, right?
It's
yeah,
more than an arm and a leg, huh? Is that it?
Yeah, it's more than an arm. The arms and legs were like 19, the early 2000s when they wanted arm and leg, livers and hearts.
If there's anybody looking for the transistor version of that, I've got I got 3 variations of it that I'm going to be parting with.
Really? Well, you can convert those to. I think that some of the
Right.
transistor ones have high voltages, right?
Right.
You can just build a filament voltage on it, and I think you could use it for.
There's a fellow up in Seattle. He builds a little interface circuit board that does all the interfacing for you.
Nice.
So the 575, it was basically tube-based driving or testing transistors. And the base model on that went to 200 volts. A lot of people have,
See,
excuse me, modified those to test tubes by adding a heater voltage. And you've still got the drive circuitry to drive the grid and the plate and come out with the curves. But its limitation is about 200 volts, unless you've got the mod
see,
122C, something like that.
Yeah.
Which will take it up to 400 volts. Then you got the 576, which will go up to 1600 volts. But then you have to, again, add your external heater voltage. And if you're driving pentodes, you have to add the screen voltage externally. Excuse me, I'm getting coughed up.
It does good for triodes then on its own.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with a heater, yeah, heater added.
Heater
do you
added,
do you ever have problems matching your ground? So is there a common? You have to go for a common ground on that so you can get the right, put voltage on that then.
Basically, you got an AB switch and the ground is common. You don't get to drive them both at the same time.
Okay.
Oh, Franklin,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to bail out now.
Well, thanks so much, Robbie. You did a great job.
Yeah, good job, Robbie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
nice talk.
Yeah, maybe I'll
I,
come up with something next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Sounds
gonna
good.
have to bail out here too, because I'm on the East Coast and it's
You
getting.
are.
Oh
I bet
boy.
what is it getting? It's
Yeah, Rick, you're hanging in there.
Well, I'm
It's
kind of a
11
late nighter anyway, but
it's 11 o'clock back there, isn't it, Rick?
Yep.
Hey, Rick,
Yep.
you want to
Alright.
do one for next week?
What's that?
Could you do one for next week?
We
could start early.
No, we don't have to start early. Yeah, I can do one next week.
Okay. Let me know what you want to do, what subject, so I can post it.
Well, somebody, when we had the meeting, we did the meeting last, I had shown off that dim bulb tester that I built, and somebody
There we
was
go.
asking about
that's
that.
right,
So I
yeah.
could,
Perfect.
I'm trying to put together a little thing now that I can put in the call letter, but I could demonstrate it, show it in operation and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that'd be
let's do that
fun.
next week. I'll do that next week.
That'll be
Sounds
fun,
good.
Rick. That'll be great.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna head out too, everybody. So, good job, Robbie. Good information, Bruce, and everybody take care. We'll
Okay.
All
we'll
right.
see you next week. Bye
Good
bye.
night.
We'll see ya.
Night.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Good night.
Hey, Mark Lacey.